Hello viewers, thank you for joining us. You are watching our weekly program Invest in Ethiopia on Open Horn of Africa. Today we will discuss Ethiopia's access to seaport and its economic benefits. To discuss this issue, I joined by Dr. Reta Dhuguma, lecturer and researcher at Haramaya University. Welcome to our program, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let me begin with this question. Ethiopia was left without a seaport following Eritrean independence, making Ethiopia the most populous landlocked country in Africa. Personally, how do you feel reminding that incident as an Ethiopian?
Of course, it's a great loss for Ethiopia. Actually, the issue was done without the knowledge or without the involvement of the Ethiopian people who should have voice in that decision. It's a big decision. So it's a decision that affects millions, the life of millions of people. So that was done and not, in a way that involved the voice of the people, because it was the liberation fronts who decide over the fate of the people by the time. So I felt that it's a great loss for Ethiopia, and its legality has to be questioned also. How a front, liberation front leaders who have no full authority during the transitional period could decide over the fate of the people, actually. So its legality must be questioned, actually, because it was not done in a formal and a legal way that involves the voice of millions of people who could have been affected by the loss of this port.
In your view, what impact has the loss of seaport made on Ethiopia economically as well as politically?
Yeah, actually, the cost we spent for obtaining access to the port is very much high. Probably, as some sources indicate, the amount costs us to about 3 billion US dollars, which could have been spent on development activities. This might create a huge development opportunity for the country had it been spent on, different projects which could have changed the life of the citizens. So in terms of economy, it's a great loss. In terms of politics, actually, Ethiopia, lost its importance in the area of the Red Sea, because in the former period, it had a very huge navy, a great force, influential force over the Red Sea region. So this might have its own impact in terms of, influencing the decisions at the world level. So Ethiopia's influence, it affects Ethiopia's influence at the world stage. Therefore, I think, it was a great loss for Ethiopia.
Well, in his recent televised message, Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed explained why Ethiopia needs to regain a seaport access from legal, historical, and the current context. How do you see the relevance and the legitimacy of this claim?
Yeah, actually, it's quite right to ask, because it's not a taboo. As some people might think, it's not a taboo to raise question. It's a matter of millions of lives of the peoples of Ethiopia. It's a matter of growth, a matter of development for the country, a matter of, the country's influence at the global level, because as the country loses control of the sea, control of access to the sea, there are privileges that might be lost together with that. So Ethiopia had these ports for a longer period of time, since the 2nd century BC, the emergence of Aksum, until 1991. Eritrea had been part and parcel of Ethiopia. As part of Ethiopia, Ethiopia possessed, the Massawa, the Adolis port, the Asab port. Ethiopia spent, its own money in building the facilities on these ports. it's the resources of the country that were spent in developing these ports, in providing some facilities which could have been important for cargo. Many tons of cargos entered the country per day. Therefore, since the Aksumite time, through these ports, Ethiopia import and export with the Middle East, even as far as the Far East Asia. So it was one of the most important, powerful empire even during the early period. Aksum was one of the four powerful empires which controlled the Red Sea area. It had its own navy. Even Ethiopia had its own navy until 1991, powerful navy. So Ethiopia was a powerful nation. It had influences over the Red Sea areas. Therefore, it's the loss of influence, the loss of if you have power over the Red Sea areas, your influence would be very high in affecting decisions at the world level. Therefore, it has its own huge impact on the country. But actually, it was historically been part of Ethiopia for a longer period of time. During the scramble of Africa, Ethiopian leaders were responsible to get access to the Red Sea, to prevent or to control foreign invaders from entering into the country. And one of the major personalities who was responsible for defending the Red Sea areas was Rasu Alula Banagga. The borders of Ethiopia was up to the Red Sea. So these areas were part and parcel of Ethiopia historically. And legally also, there are international legal conventions, the UN conventions, for instance. From legal point of view, any country has a right of access to the sea. As per the water conventions of the UN, if I'm not mistaken, it's Article 125 that deals with the right of countries for access to the sea. So as per that offer or article, I think Ethiopia has the right of access to these seaports. And Ethiopia had spent a large amount of money in developing the facilities, particularly the ASAP. From 1957 to 1964, Ethiopia, spent a huge amount of money in developing the port of Asab, and even in opening oil refinery there. Ethiopia built oil refinery there. By now, Asab is a ghost city. No one, spent any, make any activities around there. So I think if we, arrange some kind of agreement based on solid foundation, on the basis of equal benefit, on the basis of win-win approach, we can develop the port together with, Eritreans. So we can make some kind of arrangements with Eritreans so that we can benefit from it. Therefore, it will help us to develop, to grow when Ethiopia get access to that sea under some arrangements. And as a result, Ethiopia made some offer to the Eritreans. In that way, we will develop together. Actually, there is no activity around the port of Asab by now. There is no any activity, there is no any development around there. If we use or share the resources we have, we could benefit, our country. Our country will develop. Our economic ties will develop. In that way, we can grow together. So I think under certain arrangements, both Ethiopia and Eritrea should talk over this because it's a common issue, the issue of, developments. Eritrea want to develop, Ethiopia also want to develop. And the cost incurred by this use of ports of Djibouti cost Ethiopia a huge amount of budget per year. Therefore, by having some kind of argument on solid basis, both Ethiopia and Eritrea can grow together. They can, interdependence will come, ties will develop, strong ties will develop between the two countries. In that way, I think it will link the countries of the two people. I believe.
If Ethiopia has a legitimate quest for seaport access, why has it reserved it for now?
Of course, the forces that give away the ports were on power for a long period of time. That means actually, compared to Ethiopia's access to the sea, 30 years is not a long period of time actually, because Ethiopia had these ports for several centuries as part of its provinces, as part of its 14 provinces. Eritrea had been part of Ethiopia, so Ethiopia was using the ports without any influence. But the force that give it away are not ready to question or ready to ask legally the resumptions of the ports to Ethiopia. Therefore, I think, you know, originally, since these two groups, the TPLF and the EPLF, were liberation fronts, as Eritreans had much power by then, the Tigrayans or the TPLF feared that the Eritreans would take power from them, and so that they will become secondary. They play a secondary role in taking power over Ethiopia. Therefore, immediately, the TPLF was responsible for the independence of Ethiopia, for the separation of Eritrea from Ethiopia, for fear that the TPLF leader would, hold an important power over them. Therefore, the issue was originally that, actually. This is really a great, mistake, that giving away the chances of millions of people is really a very serious issue. Nevertheless, as Ethiopia has a huge potential for development, huge manpower, labor force, I think we aspire for development. Therefore, this requires the access to the seaports, so that we cannot spend huge budgets or huge amount of money for the use of the Djibouti port. Therefore, I think it's important for development to have another options, another alternative, to have access to the Red Sea. And since we have much attachment historically, at the same time we have the right legally, at the same time morally, we have the right to question, actually, because these areas were part of our country in the former period, except a period of 30 years. Therefore, I think it's legal and historically part of our country. We have historical right even. On moral ground also, we have, I think, the right to use, as already indicated by the UN Convention, Article 125. Ethiopia has a right to raise question. It's a relevant question to raise, because even those countries which are far away from the port, for about 200 kilometers, have accessed the seaports. So we are only 40 up to 50 kilometers away from the Red Sea waters. Therefore, I think the people of these areas share many similarities along the border. Actually, border is only imaginary. The people of, Afar of Ethiopia and Afar of the Eritreans live together. They have, strong ties still, connected together, unless the boundary, the boundary is only imaginary, but people have been crossing, sharing things. They have the same people of the same language, the same culture, along the, even in the northern part, along Tigrayan and Eritreans, people share many things. Therefore, people are more interconnected, the same people in different countries, in different, territory. Therefore, I think we have to value, the benefit of other peoples, so that based on give and take, we can grow together, we can develop ties, we can bring peace among, ourselves. In that way, we can better, access different opportunities the more we work together. I think it's very relevant to raise for Ethiopia, even a country which has a long attachment, let alone this long year attachment. Even those countries which are far away from the port even get the right of access to the sea.
From investment point of view, what opportunities will Ethiopia get if it gains seaport access from its neighbors?
Yeah, one of the issues that foreign investors wanted is, access to the seaport. It will attract if Ethiopia gets access to the seaport. That is in terms, from the viewpoint of cost, from time aspects, it has its own, disadvantage. The more you depend on the ports of Djibouti, there are a number of things that can, make an obstacle to the activities of the investors, because the investors want to get their job in time, to undertake their investments in different areas within a short period of time. The issue of cost is there, and bureaucratic delays were there. Therefore, getting access to the sea, can facilitate their time, money, energy. Therefore, there may not be some delay, additional costs, problems of infrastructures might be there that can delay some of the machineries that they needed for their investment. In that case, it affects them actually. Therefore, access to the sea or having ports is one of the criteria for investors to involve in different development activities. Therefore, it has its own impact.
In his discussion, Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed mentioned various alternate ports in the region. Why most of media institutions and commentators are trying to attach the issue to Eritrea?
Actually, different forces do have their own interest. Actually, Ethiopia is asking merely for its own development, for the well-being of its society. Not to force a certain country or not to wage war. I think it's based on willingness between the two countries, actually. So different group of people, in order for their own political ends, objectives, they try to portray the premier's speech into different meanings. Into, the PM has the intention of waging war, etc., etc. They say this was not actually Ethiopia's interest. Ethiopia as an African country that plays an important role in the Africa will not promote, war, will not encourage war. So it's a peaceful way of, requesting Ethiopia's right of access to the sea, rather, actually, though different bodies for their own political ends may, interpret it in different ways, in a way that can create a misunderstanding. But Ethiopia is merely asking for its own internal development and for development with their neighbor. Ethiopia is not requesting the use of port only for its own development, but in the form of, sharing the natural resources we have with each other, developing, growing together. That is Ethiopia's approach, because Ethiopia is demanding, development, demanding to provide, to feed its population, to create job opportunities for its own people. We have huge labor force, etc. To solve many problems of the country, Ethiopia need access to the sea, and Ethiopia has no other intention other than development and peaceful relations with its neighbor.
Well, as you have mentioned earlier, Ethiopia is paying billions of dollars in port fee every year. How will this affect the investment sector in particular and the national economy in general?
Yes, actually, it limited, obviously it limits the country's activity in many respects, because had these billions of dollars spent on different huge projects, which could have the potential to bring profits, revenues to the country, which could have the potential to create job opportunity, it's a great loss. Therefore, Ethiopia has to opt for other alternatives because it's dictated by its own development demands. We need to develop. We have huge manpower. Population is increasing from time to time. Therefore, we have to plan for the future. As a result, it become very important to look for other alternatives so as to reduce the costs that we spend on using the ports. So those budgets could be, driven into other development activities. In that respect, it has a great impact on the country, and we have no other option other than dealing with our neighboring countries to get access to the seaports as per the international law. And, from legal and historical point of view, we deserve the right to have access to these seaports. Therefore, in that way, we can at least reduce the burden of the cost incurred by the use of the seaports of Djibouti. Therefore, we have to look for other alternatives from our neighboring countries. We have much historical connections, even with the port of Zeila, Bulhar, Berbera. All these ports were the ports that Ethiopian people were using in the 19th century. So historically, we have much attachment through certain kind of argument, which is based on win-win approach, based on common mutual benefits. We can grow more because mostly Horn of Africa is known for conflicts, vicious cycles of conflicts, etc., etc. Those conflicts might have their own roots, but in any case, we can make the Horn of Africa the place where people will be highly interconnected, interdependent economically, since we are also related culturally, linguistically. I think we have a huge potential if we can do more, on that issue based on mutual agreement, based on our mutual development demand. If leaders, cooperate on this issue, the Horn of Africa could be linked more, interconnected, more benefited, more, so that conflicts and every kind of problems will be reduced, I believe.
Thank you. From global experience, several landlocked countries have got access to seaports using various mechanisms based on give and take principle, as you have mentioned. From the alternatives, the Premier mentioned as samples, how will neighboring countries benefit if they work with Ethiopia in this regard?
Yes, not every country has possessed all resources necessary for its needs, for its own development. Some resources that are here in Ethiopia might not be there in Eritrea or in Djibouti or elsewhere. Therefore, I think if we are sharing our resources, based on certain arrangements, certain agreement, I think we can use the resources to the development of our country. For instance, if Eritrea is given a large tract of land for its own agricultural purposes, it could feed its own people. So it could fix the agricultural production of the people, the food demand of its own people. At the same time, Eritrea will develop actually by having this kind of arrangement. It will develop its own economy because sanction was imposed on Eritrea for a long period of time. Therefore, this could have its own impact on the country's development. Therefore, by sharing our resources, the country could invest on that, could also use from that, could develop its own country, could provide the food demands of its own country. In that way, Ethiopia could get access. So being dependent on each other, ties will create, its own positive impact on the economy, on employment opportunities of citizens, in creating ties between the people. People have more or less the same culture as such, and not far from each other in culture, in language, etc., etc. So it will create more interconnections, economic connections, cultural connections, political connections. In that way, it will create, a better, opportunity for development of both countries.
Ethiopia is the second populous country in Africa and has one of the fastest growing economies in the world. How will its access to seaport contribute for holistic economic revival and integration in the Horn of Africa?
Yes, as I previously indicated, it will create a strong ties between the countries of the Horn of Africa. Ethiopia had, its role as the seat of a different diplomatic center, and as a seat of the AU. Ethiopia has the potential to interconnect different peoples of the Horn. In fact, people of the Horn are affected by, different wars and conflicts. Several wars have been fought. Conflicts are, happening here and there. The issue of terrorism, etc., etc. These aspects could be solved through, interconnection, through economic dependence, through mutual common benefits. So by empowering people through, this economic connection, we can create better interdependence, interconnectedness between the people of the Horn of Africa, because we do have various resources. We have the potential to develop. So we could change the history of wars and conflict into economic, development. Therefore, these issues, by using the ports of Berbera, or the ports of Zela, or ports of Asab, by having certain kind of arrangements with neighbors, Ethiopia can bring the Horn people together.
Finally, if you have any concluding remark, you're welcome.
I think, by having access to the sea, Ethiopia will have its own influence, both at continental and international level. It also make Ethiopia to play its role in security issues. If Ethiopia has access to the sea, if Ethiopia has the opportunity to play an important role over the Red Sea region, it could enhance the country's, voice at the international level. And even Ethiopia could represent Africa, being on the behalf of Africa. Ethiopia could enhance, the Africans at the world level. It could influence international decisions if it become, powerful over the Red Sea region. It could, keep the security of the region, the stability of the region. Therefore, it could have more voice at the international level, influence decisions at the world level. Therefore, it become the voice of Africa. At the end of the day, it will become the voice of Africa, because, since many African countries consider Ethiopia as, a symbol of their freedom, etc., and as a seat of AU, Ethiopia might have, play a key role in influencing international decisions, being on the part of on behalf of Africa. Therefore, its global influence will become higher if it gets, access to the Red Sea areas. In that way, the Horn of Africa will be in a better way, I think.
Dr. Reta Dhuguma, a lecturer and a researcher at Haramaya University, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, you too. Thank you. See you.
That is all what we have for today's program. Till the next edition, have a good time.